There are very few relationships in the world today that matter more to India than its relationship with the United States. There's trade, there's defense, there is really political cooperation as well on very, very key issues. Today, joining us to discuss these issues is veteran US diplomat and now president of the US-India Business Council, Ambassador Atul Keshap. Ambassador Keshap, thank you so much for joining us.
Shashank, it's a pleasure. Nice to see you.
So you're here in Delhi. It's just been a month since the Indian general elections concluded. How are you seeing the result? You represent, of course, US businesses and a Chamber of Commerce as well. How are US businesses seeing that result as well?
Well, look, first of all, India has proven yet again its passionate fidelity and devotion to democracy. 650 million people voted in one of the grandest, if not the grandest, exercise of electoral free choice ever in the history of our species. So that is in and of itself an amazing thing. And it represents the fact that India is a pillar of stability and continuity in a world that is getting increasingly turbulent and very uncertain. So I think for Americans, we look at India as kindred souls and spirits because you're passionate about democracy, it is a stable polity, the economy is growing, and you are free people. So we're very positive and optimistic.
Right. So you're here, of course, to talk to a number of Indian government officials. What are you going to be talking to them about? You, of course, the US-India business relationship and trade relationship has just grown from strength to strength. The conversation is about $200 billion in trade. But of course, there are changes that American businesses want as well. What are you looking to talk to Indian officials about? What changes do you want?
Well, first of all, Shashank, we have come a long way. We have a wonderful relationship between the US and India. There is an increasing pace of strategic, economic, and technological convergence. American companies have been in India for 120 years. They have helped in their own way to build the prosperity of India. They bring the very best of technology and innovation, research. They employ in the millions in India. And so what I would say on behalf of our members to the government is we applaud the economic reforms that you have made, the liberalization, the growth of the economy, the growth of the Indian market. We want to see more of that, and we want to participate in that in ways that are increasingly sophisticated between the US and India. I very impatiently want our two governments and peoples to get to $500 billion a year in annual trade in goods and services. And to do that, we have to liberalize the way that our sectors work across fintech and digital economy and energy and aerospace and defense and so many other areas on both sides. There needs to be liberalization and opening up. And I think our governments ought to treat the companies, whether Indian or American in each country, as basically being on par and to give them equal treatment to compete for business, to be able to invest in this country, to be able to hire in either country, and to ensure the prosperity and strength of both of our great nations.
Right. So with the Indian general elections, of course, the ruling party, the Bharatiya Janata Party, lost its majority. And of course, some of the conversation here and as well as abroad was, will the pace of Indian economic reforms be affected by the fact that there is now a coalition government in charge? How do you see this? You said that you would like to see more liberalization, more reforms. Do you think the pace of that will be affected by this result?
Look, that's a decision for the Indian people. You have a robust and valuable parliament like we do. And your government will make the best possible decisions for the prosperity of the people. The Prime Minister has stated that he wants a developed India by 2047. Government ministers have said that a $30 trillion India is well within reach. I think there's a historic and amazing chance for the Indian people to rise to a level of prosperity that will put India in the front ranks of nations. And if you look at the American and Indian companies that are US IBC members, they're the most responsible, upstanding companies on earth. They bring a panoply of choice and a better life for consumers everywhere. Including them in that journey can help ensure that India attains that vision. So what I would like to see is an India that is continues to be confident about the many things that it has achieved, and an India that continues to be ambitious about achieving those amazing goals that it has set for itself. I think our companies are fully supportive of that goal.
Now, you talked about India moving on that path towards development. One of the things, of course, that has acquired a lot of attention in India in recent years is this idea of China plus one. companies moving out of China because they increasingly feel like the business environment is not as hospitable as it used to be. Now, of course, but India has been having a competition with other Southeast Asian countries, Vietnam, for example, to attract American investment. Recently, American Ambassador Garcetti actually expressed some concerns about the fact that India may not actually be winning that competition. In fact, that that Vietnam may be picking up a lot of that investment from China. And he said that, look, India needs to make more changes to get that American investment. Could you talk a little bit about that? Is India indeed getting the benefit from this China plus one strategy that we should be?
So first of all, I think a lot of companies and investors are looking at India with a great deal of interest. If you look at the US IBC member companies, 200 plus companies, they are the largest companies in the world. They have tens of millions of employees. They have hundreds of billions of dollars of available investable capital, and they are looking for safe and productive places to invest. India is trusted. It's a high trust ecosystem. The US trusts India, India trusts the United States. India is increasingly capable and sophisticated in its business processes. India has the largest number of skilled, talented workforce in the entire world. So it is very attractive. And your government has made huge steps to try to make India more efficient and attractive, ease and speed of doing business. But the point is valid that compared to Mexico or Vietnam or Ohio or California or Virginia or any other place, India still has some issues related to ease and speed of doing business, including logistics costs, where India is rapidly catching up and the government is investing very heavily. But I think what our companies would want to do, and we're going to have our India Ideas Summit on September the 12th here in New Delhi, is talk to the government and to the Indian people about ways to shrink that gap between India and its competitors for investment so that we can have more happening between us. There's still quite a lot in terms of legal processes, administrative processes, logistics that could be streamlined. I think our companies want to be treated on par with Indian companies in things like tenders. There's a desire to be able to compete on a very even basis, and if they can do that, they will invest very heavily. US IBC companies have invested in semiconductors, they're investing in the defense sector, they're investing heavily in energy and fintech, so many other areas. And more of that can come as India works to implement these business reforms that will optimize the environment here.
Right. Of course, let me ask you to wear your hat as a former diplomat as well, with decades of experience. You've of course served in India as well several times. Can I ask you to talk about where the India-US relationship is right now? Where do you see what's working and what challenges you see as well? Of course, Prime Minister Modi just headed to Russia. We're just coming off the back of that. State Department, of course, saying some things about his visit, about concerns that they have with India's relationship with Russia. So just broadly, if I can ask you, what's working in the relationship and what could work better?
I was born in 1971. In all of my visits to India in those early years of the 70s and 80s, I heard at the dinner table, the family dinner table, all of the concerns that each country had for one another. And when I started my career in the State Department, one of my very first official encounters with India was working through a very long list of disagreements between the US and India. What amazes me now, 25 years into my work on India, is that the amount of areas where we disagree is almost tiny at this point, if not almost at zero. And the number of areas where we agree, where we have strategic, economic, and technological convergence has grown vastly. Look at US IBC being asked to launch with the two governments 3 major initiatives that are the hallmarks of our work together. The Initiative on Critical and Emerging Technologies, the Indus-X Defense Accelerator, and the Innovation Handshake. These reflect a rapidly accelerating convergence between our countries. Look at the Quad in the Indo-Pacific. Look at the India-Middle East Economic Corridor and the 2+2. More and more of that is happening. Our collaboration in Africa, our collaboration in the Pacific Islands, in Central Asia, and so many other places. So I'm very ambitious about our relationship. What I feel is the lagging indicator is actually the business, economic, and investment relationship, where we need to have much more integration, especially on supply chains for things that are important for the health and happiness and safety of your people and our people. That is a very urgent project of work, and government can work to facilitate business as opposed to putting obstacles in business's way. If that happens, both for your companies and ours, will both prosper mightily, and it'll be good for our security.
Could I ask you a question about this perception that's been building up? Perhaps I could ask you to dispel it or comment on it. This idea that, ever since the Pannun assassination controversy, you weighed on it before as well, but this idea of India's alleged involvement in an assassination plot in the United States, the idea is that the perception has built up that actually this has slowed the pace of US-India engagement, that it has in some ways, the sheen has come off the relationship over the last year, and it's slowed the pace of engagement with the two countries so much to the point that Deputy Secretary of State Kurt Campbell actually had to come out and address those concerns. Do you think that it has slowed the pace of engagement, damaged trust, this whole controversy?
So, look, we have a vast relationship, and there's a large Indian diaspora in the United States contributing very well to the happiness of our country. And there are so many areas where our governments work together very happily and very productively. In a relationship as vast as that, between 350 million Americans and 1.4 billion Indians, occasionally problems will come up. Between friends, it is how we solve problems that marks our friendship, right? And so when a problem comes up, and I have mentioned this about the matter that you mentioned, the governments have shown maturity and tact and a spirit of partnership in productively working together. And that is the real hallmark of friendship. And it reflects a vast amount of effort by both sides to come to that position of trust. Now, to the other part of your question, I would say I received a briefing from White House officials probably about 2 weeks ago, 10 days ago. And, Jake Sullivan's visit here, I think it was about June 17, went famously well. They had another iteration of the talks about technology convergence. There are some very serious people working in both governments to advance that, our defense partnership, cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, quantum computing, the Quad stuff, the Middle East. I'm not at all worried. I think that when you think about the crises of the past, and I've been scarred by some of them, we have learned to work much better with one another. And we have learned that we can solve problems not only between us, but in other places around the world. The US and India are the pillars, the strongest pillars of democracy and freedom in this world. And we have to get it right. And I think our governments and our societies realize that. So I'm not at all worried. In fact, I'm cheering from the sidelines saying we should do more on energy, we should do more on supply chains, we should do more on life sciences collaboration, more on defense. There's no limit to what we can do if we do it together and we treat each other as trusted friends.
I understand. And can I ask you just one final question? We can, of course, as with all good things, we can end where we began, which is on the elections. One of the irritants sometimes in the relationship, at least here on the Indian side, has been comments on India's democracy and human rights situations. There's a report that came out from the US CIRF as well just a little while back. Do you think that the election result in India that just happened very recently, of course the ruling party losing its majority, do you think that that will in some senses allay these concerns about democratic robustness in India?
I've been coming here since I was a very little boy, even a baby, and I have witnessed firsthand how robust and energetic Indian democracy is. And I have seen in my working career, including as a diplomat posted here, how voluble the Indian people are about defending their freedoms and how zealously they defend their democracy. I think that India is one of the greatest nations on earth because of that passionate commitment to democracy and freedom. It is why all of our companies are so deeply invested here. And it is why our companies want to do more in India. They want to help grow that India of tomorrow, that the vision articulated by your Prime Minister and the government of a developed India. Democracies like ours are incredibly complicated, incredibly layered, and there's a voice for everyone. So you have 1.4 billion voices, we have 350 million. There's going to be a lot of cacophony, but I would much rather have democracy with all of that churn than the alternative, which is truly ghastly. Remember the old joke about how you can look at how many people are trying to get visas to go into places like Russia and China versus how many people are trying to get visas to come to America. Ours is not a perfect system. We have our own problems, we have our own flaws, we have our own shortcomings, but we work on them in a very open and forthright and transparent manner. And that's what makes us strong. It's what makes America strong. It's what makes India strong. And I think when we sit as friends in conversations, we respect that about one another. And certainly the pandemic has taught us intensely to trust one another. So I'm very optimistic. We're going to show that optimism on September 12 at the India Ideas Summit. And we're going to show how the American private sector and the Indian private sector can really help unleash the potential of both of our great societies.
So we've talked about democracy, we've talked about elections, trade, China. At this point, I'll have to leave you, but thank you so much, Ambassador Keshap, for talking to us and laying out what's happening in the India-U.S. relationship.
Thank you, Shashank. What a delight. Thank you.